What's up everyone, Subterranean here, and today we're going to learn how to make this bass. This is a sort of high-pitched, squelchy type of bass that's been used a lot in some very recent dubstep songs. This sound has been made famous by artists like Getter, and a lot of other producers are catching on to it and they're incorporating sounds like these into their tracks. So, we're going to start by opening up Serum, and we're going to go to our menu and we'll initialize the preset, so we just have a blank slate. And we'll get rid of these external effects for now. We will of course be using those much later. And for our first oscillator, we're going to go to the analog category. We're going to select basic shapes. You can also click the link in the description box to download this project file along with the preset for Serum. And let's tune the wavetable position all the way to 6. Now we're going to be using some FM with this bass, so we're going to take our warp menu on oscillator A and we'll put it on FM from B. Let's put the warp at 33%. And we're not going to modulate it just yet. Let's get our second oscillator up first, and then we can tweak with the modulation. Our next oscillator is going to be under the spectral category. We'll choose Mesh 2. Like we always do for our frequency modulated sounds, let's take the second oscillator's level and tune it all the way down. And let's see what this sounds like so far. Kind of plain, so let's take LFO1, we'll drag it onto FM from B, and let's tweak with the modulation of it. That's way too sharp sounding, so let's tune it down a significant amount. We'll go with 27, that'll work well. Let's also take the octave of our second oscillator and we'll turn it up a good bit. We'll do +2 octaves. Now we're going to take the level of our first oscillator. We'll turn it all the way down, then we'll throw an LFO1 on, and let's tweak with the modulation, see if we get a good sound. '60 should be good. Now for our LFO1, we're going to do some changes to it. First, I'm going to load up a shape that I already made. I called it Getter, as you can see. We're going to have the rate set to 1/4. And if you want to make bass patterns for your song, you might also want to turn on the triplet feature, because Getter sometimes uses triplet rhythms for his tracks. That can create some cool sounds, but for now we'll leave it on 1/4. And the last thing we're going to do for LFO1 is we're going to go to the mode and turn it to trigger, so the pattern will restart every time we play a note. Now let's move on to LFO2. We're going to leave the rate at 1/4, but we'll turn the mode to trigger here as well. And let's just take these little curves and make them a little bit more like this. You can see that it has a little bit more a subtle start, and then it goes up a little bit more drastic. We're going to be using this later to modulate some of the effects. Now for oscillator B, let's go to the warp menu for that, and we're going to select Sync, no window. Let's throw on an LFO1 and we will tweak with the modulation. That's way too high pitched, so let's turn it down. I think we'll go with 40 for this bass. You can tweak with the modulation of the sync a lot. I actually did that a lot of times before I came up with the final sound for this bass. And you can come up with some really interesting variations on this sound. But for now, we'll stick with 40. And adding the sync to the second oscillator is what really gives it that sort of squawky, weird, almost valley high-pitched sound to the bass that's really distinct. Now let's go to the wavetable position of oscillator B. Let's tweak with that a little bit. I think 17 will be good. We'll throw LFO1 on that. Tweak with that a bit. I think we would actually prefer the wavetable position to be at 1. And maybe we'll set this at 17. That sounds pretty good. I think we'll leave it there. Now we'll turn on our filter. We'll set the filter to be a HB12 under the multi category. Let's turn the cutoff all the way down. Then we'll throw on an LFO1. And let's tweak with the modulation of it, see if we get a sound that we like. I think 56 works pretty well. Let's increase the resonance. 47% should work pretty well. Now we'll take our frequency. Let's set that at maybe 72%. Yeah, that works pretty well. Then we'll take our LFO1 and we'll do some modulation here. Minus 100 should work well, all the way back right there. And before we move on to the effects for this sound, let's just make a small tweak right here. Let's take the master and turn it down. Maybe about 60%. And now we're going to move on to the effects. The first one we're going to add on is going to be a hyper dimension. Let's tweak with the mix of the hyper first. %28% should work well there. Has a little bit of a phasing sound. Now let's take the mix of the dimension. Let's tweak with that. 19% should be good. And we'll do the same thing with the size. I think maybe 9%. Yeah, we'll leave it on 9%. Now we'll throw on some distortion. And like I do for a lot of my basses, we're going to set this to be Diode 2. And let's move the drive knob just a little bit up. 31% should be good. You can just hear that crunch start to come out a little bit, but not too much. Now we'll throw on some flanger. We'll set the rate at 0 Hertz. Let's tweak with the depth, see if we get a good setting. 58% should work well. Now we'll take our LFO2 and we'll just drag it on there. And let's tweak with this. I like it at 22. And we'll turn down the mix because we don't want too much of this going on. 63% should be good. Now we'll throw on some delay. And we're going to do something kind of interesting with the delay here. Instead of doing the traditional echo effect that most people use delay for, we're going to take the delay and we're going to play it at a very fast rate. So we're going to get kind of a tonal sound that adds to the bass. To do that, we're going to want to take BPM, turn that off. Then we're going to turn link on. So both the left and right channels are going to be playing the audio back at the same speed. And we're going to tweak with the decay time now. It doesn't matter which one we select because it's going to set that same value for both of them. But I'll just select the left value right here. And let's get a bit of a smaller number here. You can start to hear it get a little bit more of a metallic tone. This is something that some people have used for your traditional sort of robotic DAT-sick inspired dubstep basses, and it can be also used very effectively to add a little bit of metallic tone to your FM basses, just bring out that sound a little bit more. I think about 24 will work good here. I'm playing this bass in F, so it matches that. If you're going to be using this in another key, then you might want to tweak with it again, see if you can get it to match that better. But for this video, we'll just leave it at 24. And let's tweak with the feedback. Something a little bit more subtle at 27% should be good. And we'll also tweak the mix knob. I think we'll go with 19%. Now we'll throw on a compressor. We're going to set this to be a multiband compressor. Just press that button. And we're going to increase the gain. Just bring out that sound a little bit more, make it much more aggressive. Think about 6.6 decibels will work well for the gain on the compressor. And for our last effect inside Serum, we're going to add on an EQ. All we're going to do is we're going to take our second EQ band, one that's already set to this sort of high shelf mode right here. And we'll just take the gain and increase it a little bit. Maybe 4.1 decibels. I think we'll leave the frequency on the default setting. Yep, that'll do well. And now we're done with Serum, but we've still got a couple more effects to add on. We're going to add on some external effects. And the first one we're going to add on is going to be a vocoder. This is going to bring out even more of the sort of valley sounds that are going on here. First, we'll take the carrier and we'll set it to be a modulator. You could already hear a little bit of that growling type of sound coming through now that we've set the carrier to modulator. Let's take our number of bands, increase it up to 40. We'll take the low range, set that to 20 Hertz, and set the range to be the maximum of 18 kilohertz. So we'll be playing a much more wide range of the sound instead of just a little band pass type sounding piece of it. Let's take the release, and I think we'll decrease it a bit. Maybe 67.3 milliseconds. And I think I was right there. That sounds really nice. And now let's take the format knob and we'll decrease that a decent amount. Not too much though. I think minus 3.40 will work really well. Although depending on what type of sound you want to get out of this, you might want to modulate the format. You might want to have it go lower and then higher and then low and high again. Just sort of modulate it throughout the patterns of the track. But I think we'll just leave it at minus 3.40 here. Now the next effect we're going to add on is going to be a reverb. And we're going to have some very, very subtle reverb settings here. This might not seem like it makes a lot of sense at first, because initially you won't be able to hear the reverb hardly at all. But what we're going to do is we're going to add on the reverb, and then we're going to add on some OTT compression with the multiband dynamics effect. But we don't want too much of a long tail with the reverb when it's being compressed. So we're going to want to set the reverb to be at a very low decay time and a low dry wet setting, so we don't have anything that's too over exaggerated. But first, we're going to do our usual settings here. Turn off the chorus, turn on low cut and leave high cut on with the input processing panel. And we'll just make a little curve like this. And now let's tweak with the decay time knob. Remember, we want something that we can hardly hear, so the compressor can have a good time with it. I think 377 milliseconds is a good spot for that. And let's decrease the dry wet. 9.5% will be good. Now we'll load up an instance of multiband dynamics. Let's select the OTT preset. And right now you'll be able to hear the reverb a lot more clearly. Most of the sound ends. It goes away when you're done playing the note, but then the reverb just sort of kicks in, and that works really well for the drop when you want to sort of fill up space between certain sounds, but you don't want to add in a whole bunch of basses and clutter up the track. Now we are going to make some modifications to this preset, even though it already sounds pretty good. Let's take these high and mid sliders right here, and we'll just drag them, make them a little bit more heavy. That should be pretty good. And now we're going to change the outputs over here. We'll increase the high output a little bit. We'll set that to maybe 10.8 decibels. That should work well. Then the mid output, we'll go for 6.40. And then for the low output, we'll set that to 3.50. Now we're done with our multiband dynamics OTT effect. Now we'll throw on an EQ8. We're just going to do some subtle adjustments here. Let's take our second band. We'll set that to 93.2 Hertz because we decreased the low end there and that worked pretty well, but now it's starting to sound just a little bit too thin. So we want to increase more of the mid-low range of the track, not just those sort of bits that the sub bass would take care of. Now that we've got it on 93.2 Hertz, let's increase the gain. I think we'll go for 6.19 decibels, and we'll make the Q a little bit more relaxed. We'll set that at 0.62. Then we'll take our fourth EQ band, the one that's currently set to the high shelf right there. We'll set the frequency to something relatively high, but not overtly so. We'll try 4.82 kilohertz, and let's increase the gain. Let's just tweak with it, see what we get. Maybe 5.12 decibels. And I think I'd be right there. You can hear it really bring out that crispiness in the sound. And then we'll take our third band. We'll take the gain and put it all the way down at minus 15 decibels because we're going to get rid of a little bit of a resonant frequency. There's a very small frequency that's resonating just a bit at 510 hertz. So we'll just type that in, and we'll tighten up the Q all the way to 18. And now it's taking care of that frequency. You can hear before I added that. Now that I added it, just a little bit more clean. And finally, the last effect we're going to add on is going to be a free third-party plugin. We're going to add on Clip Shifter. First, let's take our in gain and we'll increase it. We'll do 7.62 decibels. Over on our threshold panel, we'll take the end knob and let's tweak with that just a little bit. About minus 15.49 decibels should work for the end. And one small thing that I almost forgot to mention with this bass, we're not getting that signature squelch that Getter and other artists like to use in their tracks. So, to get that sort of almost detuned type of sound, which is how I've described it, what you want to do is you're going to want to go to the semitones panel on oscillator B, and let's increase that all the way up to +7. And now you can hear a big difference. And one small tip that I have for producers who are making tracks with basses similar to these, in your patterns, you're going to want to use a lot of pitch bending. It makes it sound a lot more interesting. You can leave it set at the default value of +2 and -2, or you can make it more severe and have some really crazy pitch bend sounds going on. Either way, they sound really good. It's just all up to preference. You can see that in the pattern I made, I have a good bit of that going on. It goes down and up and goes up again and then down at the end. Patterns like that work really well. And now we finally have our completed sound. So that was my tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this video and leave a comment as it really helps us out. And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.